there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to this special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. This is our August Picks of the Month episode. If you're not familiar with this series, basically we look at cards that I feel are undervalued, might be good pickups, just based off of the amount of play they're seeing in different formats. In this episode, we're going to look at modern staples, actually. Every card we're going to talk about today is a modern staple that's seeing extensive play that I feel is actually undervalued compared to the amount of play that it's seeing. So if this is a single that maybe you have on the back burner that you want to pick up, this is a friendly reminder to say, you know what, some of these cards may go up in value over the next 6 months, a year or so you might want to move them up on your priority list. Now, a quick note about the pricing here. This video comes out first to gold patrons. So by the time you see it on YouTube, it might be a few days old. I don't anticipate any major changes in pricing, though, considering everyone's attention right now is on standard. Quickly, before we get started, though, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support the channel, one of which is our Amazon affiliate store. You'll find a tab there with all the singles we're going to talk about today. So if there's anything you want to pick up, if you pick it up there, or really anything, a small percentage will come back to help support the channel. Always goes a long way. Secondly, you'll also find our Patreon page linked below. All right, let's move on to the cards for the day. We're going to start off with some white cards with Path to Exile. Now, this is valued at $7. This is the Modern Masters 2017 version, the most recent version of the card, and it wasn't uncommon. A lot of the cards you'll see today actually have been reprinted over the course of the last year or so, and part of the reason I picked some of these cards is just simply, once they get a reprint, there's no real guarantee they're going to get a reprint for another maybe a year, 2 years down the road. So there's a good chance that during that time, these cards could grow. Path to Exile, I think, is a perfect example of that. No matter how many times they reprint it, even at uncommon, the card is just so highly played that it just keeps creeping up. I mean, still $7 for this card. It just seems crazy. But the amount of play it sees in Modern and Legacy definitely warrants it. And will it be reprinted again? Of course it will. It'll probably be reprinted at Uncommon when it does get reprinted. But at least for right now, if you need copies of this card, I think $7 is actually a fair price. Next we have Stony Silence at $4.49, another card that was in Modern Masters 2017. Now I will say, Graveyard Hate maybe isn't as essential as it was a few months ago, back when Dredge was stronger and stuff like that. But it still is essential and is still a big part of modern sideboards. And this card is a steal, actually, when you consider how much it's being played out of those sideboards at under $5. All right, let's move on to blue. Serum Visions, another Modern Masters 2017 uncommon, actually. $2.09. Serum Visions is a funny card because basically when you talk about the world of Modern, if you want a blue card that's going to allow you to get some card selection, dig through your deck a little faster, this is the best card of its kind. Now, we've seen better ones printed prior to Modern legal sets, and we've seen some better ones printed even after that point, but they were banned. So this is kind of the best one that is available to you. But again, because this card is so prominent in Modern, and again, even though it has been reprinted, it's been a common in the past, it's an uncommon most recently, of course, but at one point, this was a $10 common. It just goes to show you how much play this card sees and will continue to see. If we don't get a reprint for maybe another year, 2 years down the road, maybe this is a $10 card again. Next, we have Snapcaster Mase. I picked the Innistrad version here. However, the Modern Masters 2017 version is almost the same price. They're pretty comparable. Right now, this one's valued at $52.39. As far as the choice between the two cards goes, I think it just depends on your art preference. If you like the new art, which does look awesome, then go with the Modern Masters version. If you like the original card and you like the invitational art, then go with the original version. But either way, you can't go wrong. This is an expensive card, don't get me wrong. I mean, you're investing into a lot for your deck when you buy this. But at the same time, this card sees so much play in Modern, Legacy, Vintage, that if you don't buy it now, I think it's just going to keep creeping up. And since we just saw it in Modern Masters 2017, could be another year, 2 years down the road before we see another reprint, and who knows what the value will be at that point. All right, let's look at some black cards. And black has been a pretty strong color recently in Modern, so we'll see a number of cards here. We'll start with Collective Brutality at $10.90. I have been preaching about this card since it was revealed about a year ago. And I hope you've been listening because the card has slowly creeped up. Now it's over the $10 mark. This is simply going to be a Modern staple for some time to come. I think of this card right alongside of cards like Thoughtseize or Surgical Extraction. These are just must-haves if you're playing black and Modern, quite honestly. This has been coming and going in Standard as well for a while. It's going to rotate out of Standard this fall. but I don't really see it impacting the price all that much, quite honestly, just due to the fact that it sees so much play outside of Standard. And secondly, it's from Eldritch Moon, which when you look at current era Magic, and I'm talking basically Return to Ravnica forward, this is probably the Standard set that has had the lowest print run of all of them, just because of its relationship to other big releases that were around it last summer. So because of that, low print run, card that's seeing a lot of modern play, this thing has potential going forward. It's not easy to reprint either because it has the escalate mechanic, so they're going to have to pick their places to reprint this very carefully. It's going to be a while before we see it happen. Death Shadow. This is the Modern Masters 2017 version at $9.55. Now, Death Shadow decks have been, I don't want to say dominant, because it's not like they're necessarily dominating the standings, but I will say percentage of field-wise, they're very dominant. And to be fair, there's a number of variants of these decks. They're all a little bit different. So you could argue that there's really 3 different strong ones out there right now. But regardless, the card Death Shadow itself is very hot, and a lot of players are using it. And again, it just recently got reprinted, so we don't know when we'll see it again. It could be quite some time. I do want to point out one thing, though. There's a Selesnya Company deck out there that looks really good now against some of these Death Shadow strategies. So keep that in mind. Maybe don't overpay for this card. If you can find it on the cheap, maybe $7, $8 is probably a good pickup, but you might want to wait and see over the next few weeks what happens in the world of Modern. So that Company deck looks very, very strong. Todd Stevens ran it in the team competition at the Star City Games Open a week ago. Deck looked phenomenal. Next we have Fatal Push, another card that's actually still standard legal, of course. $9.01. Back when this card first came out, you could pick these up for $5, so it's already sustained $4 worth of growth. Another card that eventually, when it rotates out of standard, who knows what the price point will be at that point, but I don't think will matter that much because it sees so much play in Modern and Legacy, right? So yeah, this card is just another one of those staples going forward. It's not going anywhere. With the Revolt mechanic, again, it makes it a little hard to reprint it. You're going to have to pick your places, and it's probably going to be a few years before that actually happens. This card is definitely the real deal. Next, we have Inquisition of Kozilek. This is another card from Modern Masters 2017, $4.01. It was reprinted, fortunately, as an uncommon this time around. The previous time, it was a rare. If this was a rare in Modern Masters, I feel like this could have potentially been like a $10, $12 card today. But fortunately, it's a little bit cheaper. You can still pick these up. But it is seeing a ton of play, and I think will only creep up over time. Next, we have Street Wraith, $8.34 for the Modern Masters version, which, may I remind you, was a common. Its original printing from Future Sight was at uncommon, but another card that is seeing a lot of play, a lot of it due to Death Shadow. So keep a couple of things in mind, though, with this one. Again, I did say Death Shadow may have some competition in the future, but also, secondly, it's been a long time since this has been reprinted and has been on the radar for a while. So I wouldn't be shocked to see this show up maybe in either Iconic Masters or Masters 25. So don't overpay for this card. I pointed it out because it is seeing a lot of play, and I think it will go forward seeing a lot of play. But at the same time, if you can find these maybe for $4 or $5, that might be a better deal, and you can if you look. Thoughtseize from Theros, $21.71. Now, I went with the Theros version as opposed to the Lorwyn version because I think this price point is still a good price point compared to the amount of play that it does see in Modern, which is significant. So keep that in mind. This card's seeing a lot of play. It's going to see a ton of play going forward in the future. Now, the Lorwyn version, of course, is different art. It's going to cost you more than double this price point, though. Some players actually prefer the Theros art. Some prefer the Lorwyn art. If you play a Fairies deck, you might like Lorwyn because it does have a fairy on it. But the big difference between these two versions is print run. Lorwyn came from a time when less Magic was printed to begin with, plus there was a lull in the game at that time, and there were less players playing, less packs being purchased and opened, which led to less cards being printed. That was a very, very low print run compared to this Theros copy, which came out when the game was very strong and booming. Tons of packs were being opened. There were many, many copies out there in circulation. I can't even begin to estimate the difference, but I know it's very significant. So this card has a much lower price point. Still seeing a lot of play. I don't think this is going to get reprinted in a standard set again. Doesn't feel like that was something that Wizards felt went well when they printed it in Theros. So it will get reprinted, but expect it more in a Masters set. It could show up definitely in Iconic Masters or Masters 25, so do keep that in mind. Probably at a rare. I don't think they would make this mythic. So that could keep this relatively stable, but just long-term wise, I think this is still a good pickup. All right, let's look at a lone red card with Lightning Bolt. $2.50 for the Magic 2010 version, but you can go a lot of directions with Lightning Bolt. I mean, if you want a real fancy one, you can pick up an expensive alpha one if you want, but if you just want a cheap one to play with, this is one of the cheaper ones you can pick up. But still, over time, I do think this will go up. Will Lightning Bolt get reprinted again? Sure it will. Probably not a common, maybe uncommon in a lot of sets going forward would be fair enough, but for the most part, again, this is a card you'll probably see in some Master sets. Definitely will show up either in Iconic Masters or Masters 25 to some degree, I'm sure. But at the same time, I think long run wise, you're safe picking these things up for like $2. Next we have Primeval Titan. This is the Magic 2012 version at $9.27. This is a card that's been key in a couple different decks. Things like Titan Shift, Amulet Titan. Fantastic card for those decks, and still under $10, at least for this particular version. Arcbound Ravager. This is the Darksteel version, $39.73, although you can pick up the Modern Masters version for about the same price point, depending on which one you prefer again. But this card is a key part of Affinity and Modern. It's also very good in Vintage shops. Now, the percentage of people playing paper Magic and playing Vintage shops probably isn't super high, but it's enough to move the needle, definitely, on this card. More so, though, Affinity players and Modern are the ones looking at this particular card. Now, this is one of the differences between a budget Affinity deck and a regular full-on Modern Affinity deck. There's some others, but this is definitely one of them. Also, keep in mind, though, it's been a while since this saw a reprint, most recently being the first Modern Masters, so I would not be shocked to see this card show up in, again, either Iconic Masters or Masters 25. Again, I still think there's long-term value to be had here. Next is Grafdigger's Cage, $3.61 for that Modern Masters 2017 version. And again, I mentioned earlier that there are decks still looking for graveyard hate from the sideboard, and this is a great option. It's cheap, fits into any type of deck, and because of that and the fact that it just got a reprint, this card will continue to creep up. Relic of Progenitus, $2.28. This was most recently reprinted in Eternal Master, so not too long ago. And basically everything I said about the previous card applies to this one. Signal Past. Here's one of the key Affinity cards that's still really cheap, 79 cents. And maybe this does get a reprint at some point. Obviously, it's been a while since this card was released, but at the same time, under $1, it's a very safe pickup. Next we have Steel Overseer, $12.99. This is the Magic 2011 version. There is a dual deck version that will run you about the same, sometimes a little bit more. And I should point out too, there's a couple cards we talked about today, like this one, Arcbound Ravager, that also have Masterpiece versions out there. We're not really talking about Masterpieces today. They don't typically affect the regular versions of the cards all that much. They're really more for high-end collectors of rarities and foils, maybe players that want to throw them in Commander or Cube, stuff like that. But anyway, Steel Overseer. This card is great in Affinity, also great in that Shops deck in Vintage, much like Arcbound Ravager. And our last card is Vault Scourge at 45 cents, another cheap Affinity pickup. It's a common, it will see a reprint at some point, but it is new Phyrexian mana, so they're going to have to pick their spot carefully. But with that being said, if you're ever interested in maybe playing Affinity in the future, getting a play set of these for under $2 I think is a good way to go. With that being said, those are our picks for August. Now, next month, September Picks of the Month video, we're going to talk about Standard. We're going to be getting close to the time of rotation for Standard when that video comes out. So we're going to talk about cards that are rotating out that you might be able to get on the cheap that are still good in other formats like Modern, Legacy, Vintage, Commander, Cube, or what have you. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.